But okay, so we've got the seeds of doubt. And I think like the reason I'm getting into this is not just I'm trying to psychoanalyze you, because there is a picture to be painted of your sport life. And I'm getting ahead of myself just a little bit, but I think everybody knows. When did you know that you had a medical condition that would put a timer on your sporting life, or generally maybe even your life at that point? When did you know?
So I hadn't known fully the extent of it, but I knew like when I first got diagnosed when I was 2 that I had kidney disease. I knew I went to doctors more often than other people, but it was 8th grade. I'm not in the wrestling photos for 8th grade wrestling because I had a kidney biopsy during that time over spring break. And the reason for that was when they discovered that protein was spilling into my urine. And so it was 8th grade that I was officially put on medication. I was put on a Nalipro, which helps prolong kidney function. If you look it up, it's a heart blood pressure medication, but it's used in this particular case on a smaller dose, which one of the side effects of it was cramping. And it was at that point that I think I really had the realization that like, yo, this is really starting to actually affect me. Whether I knew when it would come, the timetable was like, oh, it could be when he's 40, something like that, because they didn't really get a super clear diagnosis, because they diagnosed me with Alport syndrome. But Alport syndrome is a genetically carried condition, and there is absolutely no history of it in my family. Therefore, based on general understanding, they just kind of threw me in that box because it's the one that made sense. My mom had lupus, and she had, at this point, had her kidney transplant when I was in 5th grade. That was actually a traumatic day, but we don't talk about that yet. And so I understood like what all like kidney function affected and stuff like that. And so at that point, I kind of had this understanding that I have a detriment that a lot of the other athletes around me probably do not have. At least not the same thing. Different people have different things. And it was at that point, it was just kind of like, you know, this is what I have. I'm just going to do with what I can in that moment.
I see. And that was 8th grade?
Yeah.
That you really started, because you got the results back from the biopsy, I bet.
Correct.
And that's where they found the protein, and that's where they found things were not looking good.
Yeah. So they found the protein in my normal checkup because it appeared in the urine, and that's when they ordered the biopsy. And so during that time, I had a lot of meetings with a lot of different doctors down at Cincinnati Children's Hospital, which, by the way, fantastic hospital.
That's why my nudes are going to support them.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't realize that. Yeah.
But you didn't tell anybody?
No.
You didn't tell a soul?
No. The only people that knew were my family. And it was one of those things that it was just like, I don't want people to look at me any differently. I don't want people to feel sorry for me. I don't want people to give me an excuse. I'm me, and it's the only life that I know, and I don't want people to be like, oh, he's lesser than because of this. It's if you've ever heard the compliment, it's like, oh, you did this amazing thing in spite of this. It's not as much of a compliment as you think it is.
Yeah.
It's amazing that I accomplished that, period. Don't say it in spite of this.
Yeah.
That's just like, oh, look at you doing something great after you went through all of this shit. And it's like, fuck off. Just fuck off.
Yeah, I see. So do you think that any of this spilled over from when you were a child? Like you knew something. As a kid, you don't know anything, but you know, you can pick up on vibes. You know, you can pick up on like what the rhythm is. You said yourself, you know, you went to doctors more than other kids. So do you think even as a kid you knew like something was different, and this seed of this mindset was there where you were like, I can do just as much as anyone else. Like, why wouldn't I be able to? Because my willpower is there to do it. That confidence is there. Do you think that had any effect on it?
It's possible. I think the other thing was I was always naturally gifted with motor skills and talent. So like I could run fast. When I played backyard football with the neighborhood kids, I was always the first picked. You know, different things along those lines, like capture the flag, I was the first pick. We had rules where I couldn't be on the same team as other people because then we'd be too good. So there was a level of like respect for the skill set I had, but it was one of those things that, you know, my brother was less in tune in that front. And so I was always bigger and athletically superior in that way, but he always had a better work ethic than I did. And so it was something that my dad kind of talked about. Is like, if you had your brother's work ethic, you would destroy everybody. And so, there was always this level of I've got to prove myself. I feel like that's a younger brother mentality too, is it's just like you got to prove yourself. And there were different times I got picked on for different things or excluded from stuff because I was younger. But it's possible it had to do with that. But really, I think it just had to do with more of my personality. I always wanted to be the best.
Do you still feel that way today?
In everything that I do, I focus on putting my best foot forward. I recognize that, being the best is subjective, and I look more in the sense of being the best version of myself. But yeah, when I'm competing against somebody in a sport, I will go to the ends to prove people wrong.